Alright, so we're going to rig a character in Bear from scratch. So first thing we want to do is go to the Bear settings and define a new asset folder. Um, in this case, the character will be called Patrick. So we will just type in Patrick here and confirm. So this asset folder will be created. And now Bear is working in this asset environment. So first thing we want to do is import the model. I prepared the model here. And there's also already the geometry group here. So if you go to the Bear settings, naming convention, you can define the name of the geometry group here. So this will help Bear to find the deformations. So from here, we can just say, since we have defined the asset folder, we can say save model, and Bear will let us know that the model will be saved in this asset folder. Character is Patrick, that's fine. And we can see that, yeah, the model has been saved in Patrick version 01 model. So this is the structure we are using. We don't necessarily have to save the model out. We can also define a custom model folder. Um, so we don't necessarily need to save out the model inside the Bear asset folder. We can also just open the model from pipeline directly and save that as a Bear setup file instead. So this model save step is optional. All right, so from here we can create the biped from the collections. So this will bring in all the biped guide groups. So if we select the guide group, go to build and settings, we can see all the attributes for each component. And there are various settings, like the most common one is the twist counts for upper and lower arm and leg, and the number of digits, fingers. So this defaults to 5, that's fine. So 2 segments for thumb, 3 segments for index, 3 segments for middle, ring, and pinky. And also we want to have a digit base, which is the joint on the palm, the joints on the palm actually, right? So by default, we just want to create all of the bases. We have the option to use digits numbered naming instead of the tokens index, middle, pinky, and so on. So this might be useful for toes, for quadrupeds, and various other options. But the default is fine for the biped. So we can just go ahead and create the rig for all of those components. So 11 components will be created. So we'll just take a second. Here we go. So this is our default biped guide. Yeah, and from here we can already start placing the guides. So it doesn't really matter where we start, but I like to go from top to down and using the outliner. So yeah, we can open the entire group here, or just select the guide pivot and then select the shape from here. So this is quite convenient. So we can directly scale the shape of this root guide. So we can already test and see the result by creating the rig for this selected component. I just built this, and this is the rig build result. So the rig build creates 2 additional nodes here. If we go to the root component settings, we can see options like has placement and has main. So if we deactivate that and rebuild, we'll actually only end up with this control here. There's also the option to have to create a joint. This might be useful for props. So if we scale the guide shape here and instantly rebuild, then we can see the result here, right? So we can simply, what I'm doing here is I just unhide the guide here, right? Because when you create a rig, then the guide automatically gets hidden. You can actually define this setting here if you don't want to automatically have the guide or rig hidden on builds, then you can uncheck the options here. So you can instantly swap between guide and rig and rebuild things to until you are satisfied with the control sizes, for instance, for this root component. So let's continue to the spine. Again, unhide the guide, hide the rig. And it's recommended to use the outliner here. It's just very convenient to find all the guide pivots. So here we want to align the spine guide. So we want to have, because this is a very cartoony character, we want to have a big range of squash and stretch. So we actually want to pull the start and end guides for the spine fairly far up or down. And so here selecting the shape comes in handy, where we can just scale all the control shapes up. So again, this is still the guide. We can directly scale and transform those guide shape nodes. So no need to freeze transform. In fact, never do freeze transform, because Bear needs those values to correctly create the rig actually. So again, we can test this by building the rig from this component, and we can see the result here, right? So obviously all of these controls have been matched to the guide shape, size, and the values are all correct. So there are more controls than we have in the guide. The guide only has these 4 guide shapes for all of the reverse and forward FK controls. There are additional settings. If we go to setting, we can also see it here in the channel box. But for the guide shapes, we also have all the settings available in an extra settings UI. We can see all the settings here that we can define for the controls, like locking parameters and stuff like that. Adjusting the shape type, so we can see instantly the result here, right? So we want to just use the circle by default. And this is interesting to note. So there are additional attributes for the FK shape and the reverse FK shape. So there's no preview for that. But like I said, if we want to change it to whatever pyramid or something, we can do the rig build and see the result. So here we can see the reverse FK all have pyramid control shape styles. But the default should be fairly fine. Select shape and settings. So here the rectangle was pretty much fine, I suppose. So we can change the shape and colors here for those and give them an additional shape size offset actually. So this is how the guiding for component for components work which turn out to have um, different levels of controls on the rig build, but are controlled only by one guide shape, right? All right, so this should be fine for the spine alignment. Now let's go to the next component, the chest. So the chest pivot can live anywhere actually, but it's recommended to move it more down. So this will be a meaningful pivot for the animator. So it doesn't need to be like at the top of the spine or something. This is totally independent. It doesn't need to live here or right on top of the spine top. No, it can just live anywhere. This just defines the pivot for the chest, and the chest controls the spine finally. So for the shape, I like to use the 3D circle. So we can just move it up here so it's convenient to grab for the animator. Right. Again, if we want, we can test the rig build here. And I also want to rebuild the spine to update to the rectangle shape. Here we go. So this looks pretty fine. So we can already test the functionality here. Also, we can toggle on the joint display for the spine and chest to have a preview of the spine functionality here. So this seems to be pretty fine. Now let's continue with, or actually skip the body guiding here. So body guide pivot, this is the COG if you want. If you don't like this name, you can also call it COG, right? And on a rebuild, we can simply rebuild this, and the guiding will update accordingly. I mean, the transforms will be recovered, so you won't lose transforms if you rebuild the guide naming convention actually. Well, let's put the name back to body, the default. And for the body, yeah, I like to use. Let's go to the UI. I like to use the shape rounded rectangle, and it should also be a green color. So the color, actually, there's a preview for the color display in the guide already, but due to some Maya limitation, it doesn't always update instantly, so there's a toggle for it. But in any case, you can always just build the rig component to see the final result. Right, so this is the body and the hips. We can place the hips a little bit more up. So the hips is very similar to the chest in terms of technical behavior. The hips will control the spine. So the animator wants to have the pivot for the hips live a little bit more up by default. So for the shape, I'm also going to use a 3D circle. Oh, sorry, I need to we'll open the correct settings rollout here. Yeah, shape 3D circle. Actually want to, yeah, scale it like this a little bit and build the rig. And here we can already, again, test the spine, right? So we have this and this end, right? So technically they are very similar. Actually, I wanted to scale it the other way around like this. Rebuild. There you go. So this gives kind of a is kind of contradictory to the chest shape. Fine. Yeah, so let's continue. The next component will be the neck. Again, I want to hide the rig and unhide the guide. So here, let's go to the right view. Let's just hide all the rest of the guides here. Focus on the neck placement. Also want to hide the shirt for now. Let's just hide the entire clothes group here. Right, so we can place the neck here. It's recommended to just align the orientation as well. Doesn't really matter in this case very much because it's a biped and he's aligned straight up to Y. But for quadrupeds, it definitely would make a difference where necks upended a lot. But we can always rebuild. I mean, these are things that need readjustment anyway when doing the skin weights. We might want to adjust this, so we don't need to go too crazy precise with it right now. Simply scale the guides a bit. Also, we can open the settings. So this is a very similar component to the spine. Actually, technically, it's exactly the same. It is actually a spine component. The neck is just called neck, right? The name is neck, but the component type is spine. And it has a few properties to actually make it a neck. So there's a is neck attribute. So this creates some special connections for better neck behavior, where you can actually move the head around and the neck will follow and stuff like that. So this is special to the neck. That's why we have the is neck attribute here. All the default settings are fine. Joint count 6 should be fine as well. Might be lower, but that's all right. So that's all about it for the neck. So the head, yeah, here we have a neck guide pivot, which actually should be aligned to the neck one here. Just image transforms here. So this is kind of the main neck. So there's actually the option to not use a neck at all, like a NURBS curved rig neck. So the entire neck component is actually optional for simplified characters. And for the head, there's actually the option to uncheck has neck, so the connections are created correctly. Okay, select shape. So we also want to bring this up a little bit. And yeah, we can again place this very conveniently. Actually can be independent to the top neck joint, but this is something we want to try out later. Maybe we want to actually snap it to the same position. I mean, this really depends on the type of character, the cartooniness, and if it's quadruped or not, and stuff like that. So we can play around with that later if we want to have it aligned or not. So for now, just we can just place it as a pivot as to be convenient for the animator. Here, also I want to use the 3D circle shape, and yeah, this should be. I like to use this kind of shape here. That's right. Right, so this is all about it for the torso guides. We can just create the rig for all of these components and have a first test with all of it. Everything is connected nicely. We can also just select all of these and show joints so we can get a better idea of the functionality. So here you can see the connections between neck and head, where the neck is rotating accordingly, and yeah, we can actually have a very nice neck behavior. When we go to the deformation, we will see how nicely it plays out. Fine, so let's continue with the arm guides. I'm gonna hide the rig here again. Also, I wanna hide all of these components just to have a clean view. So where are we here? Always a good idea to open the outliner to see all the available guide pivots. So the shoulder pivot should just live right here. Don't put it too far in front of the clavicle to the clavicle joint, because the shoulder is actually a more complex thing anatomical wise. So it's not correct to just put it here and leave it like that. I mean, this would be fine if we had a complex shoulder rig with the scapula and all this stuff. But for simplified and especially cartoony, it's better to just put it pretty much in the middle here. Also, don't put it too far back here because shoulders are lifted up, so it might crash in this area a lot. So we actually want to put it a bit more towards this corner here to have better deformation in the end. You will see the difference. So the rule here is actually what looks right is right. It's a simplified rig, more or less, right? It's cartoony. So let's choose a different shape. So we can choose the shape here if we want, or we can go to the settings, right? Settings is just more convenient to see all the attributes. And we can also do multiple selections, actually. We can select shape, and as you see here, multiple guides selected. We can change attributes for all the shape guides at once. I like to use the cube shape here. Okay, let's continue with the joints here. So with the upper and lower arm. So the joints here are only for preview. We cannot manipulate them. For the placing, we use those placer guide pivots. So we have with this setup, we actually have a direct preview of the IK and the up node placement, which is very convenient. So we can simply, yeah, place the upper arm here, something like this. Lower arm should go here. Let's also take a look at the topology here. Yeah, it should be more or less right here. So the wrist should be pretty much here. And here, now we can make a very precise alignment of the lower arm to have the up node at the right spot. So we don't need to rebuild or something and do whatever fancy adjustments. We can simply move this a little bit and we can instantly see where the up node will be placed on the rig. So this up node actually also has a guide pivot. We can select the pivot here as well. We don't need to go too fancy in the outliner here. You can just select this one and just select pivot to move. So this is restricted to translate set only, right? So the default should be pretty much fine. Default shape is a sphere as well, that's fine. So we want to scale these shapes a little bit to fit better. You can also move them down a bit like this. And for the wrist, we actually need to adjust the wrist tip placer guide pivot for the orientation. So we just place this at the end of the palm here. So the setup is done like this, so we can have a better automatic guiding, right? I mean, if we had rigged this character already and guided this character already, and let's say the model had the same topology, we could make use of the align to geometry feature that I introduced earlier in the demo video. Sorry. So all the guides would snap automatically. And for that feature to work correctly, we have these tip placer guides here. Just works better with the guide snapping. So the wrist is the wrist FK, I suppose. Let's take a look at the setting here. Wrist guide shape, yeah. So there's an IK target shape. For this one, we can use the cube, and the default shape is the FK shape, actually. So we can actually just preview this on the rig build. We can see the full result. So this is the FK mode. So we can switch here instantly to IK mode. And we can see here, this is the cube that we just selected in the guide shape. So we can see up node is aligned correctly. IK works as expected, let's say. Let's select the component. And actually, I want to select the rig component. There's no shortcut for that here. To display the joints. So we can see here, yeah, the IK works very nicely, exactly as previewed in the guide. All right, so last but not least, the placing of the fingers. So there's a parent for all of these nodes. So we want to place this first, just very, very rough placement. Doesn't matter where this pivot lives. We can just align it to this node, but it really doesn't matter. It's just a parent for the, or we can also match all transforms orientation as well. This is just for the guide placement. It doesn't have any effect on the rig build. So here also we have all of these guide placer nodes. So thumb 0. So there's 0, 0 all are these base digits that I pointed to in the guide component. Digit has base, true, true, true. All of these nodes turn out to have the index 0, 0. So those nodes will live at the root of the palm. So it will be laid out something will be laid out like this. Let me just make the index first and hide the thumb for now. So this is the tip. So let's just align it to the tip here. So this is the third segment. Should be aligned here, so it's fine. Second one should live here. And the first one is the knuckle here. Don't forget about the anatomical rule. 5-3-2 for the length ratios. The first segment has 5 units. The second has 3 and the last one 2 in relation to each other. This is very important for proper anatomical fist functionality. So it should be pretty much lined up like this. And I will just continue with all the guide placement for the rest of the fingers. Just one thing I want to mention before doing that, it's a good idea to save an iteration, and this is done by simply going to File, Save Setup. So where we'll now create the first setup file for this rig under version 001. Here we go. All right, so the guide pivots for the fingers are all in place. What I need to point out though is the orientation. So there's a twist value here for those guide pivots. So we want to have the y-axis point up. So we could just simply adjust all the twist values here. So for all of these nodes by default, it's all pointing up here, so this should be fine. But we might need to fine tune this a little bit. For example, this one to point out a little bit better aligned, right? So this is some fine tuning we need to do in the deformation, I guess. Right, so we want to rotate this a little bit outwards here, right? Oh yeah, this should be pretty fine for some basic alignment here, and fine tuning will be done on the deformation anyway. Fine. So let's continue with the lag, and actually we can already mirror this one. Mirror functionally works as follows: activate guide building, and for the left side selected, we want to build the right side, so we're going to check right side here, selected component, build. And this will build the right side mirrored from left, and any existing right side obviously will be replaced. Right, so let's continue with the leg. So here, similar to the arm, we have a parent guide pivot here. So for the leg, for the arm, it functions as the shoulder, and for the leg, it's just a parent where you can move the root of the leg basically, which might be useful for the animator to make fine tunings on the walk cycle and stuff like this. But yeah, same principle. Yeah, this one, this one should be aligned to that. Match translation. So here, obviously for the arm, the parent guide lives somewhere here and the upper lives here. For the leg, they are both at the same location, except maybe for quadruped for the front leg. Alright, so the lower guide pivot, or knee in this case, should be placed somewhat here. And once we also place the ankle, we will see the up node snip back correctly to the front. So let's first find a good pivot here for the ankle, which should be somewhere around here, I suppose. And then finally we can make some adjustments. So this pivot should live a little bit more outwards anyway, so can use this also to fine tune the up node placement, or use this one to make the up node place be located like straightforward like this. But this looks pretty much fine. So ankle toe, there is, let's place the toe. Yeah, the toe should be located somewhere right here, I suppose. And there's also the toe tip, similar to the palm tip, basically. All right, so for all of those nodes, let's select the shape and scale this up a little bit. I shouldn't select joints. Select shape. Oh, this doesn't seem to work. Oh yeah, sorry, the shapes are right here, I guess. Upper shape. lower shape is located here. Oh, seems like there is a bug where it doesn't select all of the shapes of this hierarchy. I guess this needs fixing. So we're gonna just select those manually and scale up. Right, so this is the FK shape, toe FK shape. And again, for the IK shapes, we can go to those settings here, to this one's, to this setting. Strangely, my Maya doesn't select the guide shape node. Let's ignore that. All right, so yeah, on this node, the ankle guide shape, we can see the properties for the IK target shape actually. So just defaults to biped leg, okay, that's fine. All good. So there's some extra attributes to make to define the placement of this biped leg, okay. Let's just build this to see what it's all about. So we're talking about this platform shape here, this one. And as we see, it doesn't really align very well. So we want to make it a little bit larger overshoot size, rebuild. And we can see, yeah, platform is already getting larger. Let's take 0.5. So unfortunately, there's no preview in the guide for that. There might be an update in the future where this is respected. But right now, and it's not placed correctly because the placing of this control is dependent on the on the on the front and back and inner and outer pivots. So we actually want to place these first. Let's go to the right view. And for this pivot, let's place it so that if we rotate the toe down, actually meeting up at this point, its connection to the ground will be kind of right here. For the back, it might be here. It's fine. Also, let's move those a little bit further than X. So for the inner, we'll grab this edge here. Also, the Z axis we might want to align fully to the border of the foot here. And for the outer as well. Let's move it to this edge here, and then Z axis should also align to the back edge here, something like this. So if we rebuild the leg component now for the rig, then we can see, yeah, the platform is nicely aligned to the foot, and now we can actually also lower the overshoot size a little bit, and then the overall shape should be, yes, maybe a little bit too small. Maybe let's take this 0.3 build, and this should be a good size for the platform, for the IK control. Right, so again, if we want, we can display the joints to get a better idea of the setup. This looks all good. Soft IK works nicely. Hub node placement, just as expected. And for this one, actually, we want to use a different shape for the parent control. We can find this on that upper guide. Oh, sorry, this one obviously. Let's go to the settings and choose. I like to use a box unhide the guide, and I like to move this a little bit. Sorry, this is the pivot. I need to select the shape, obviously. So move the shape kind of like this, so it's easier to grab for the animator. All right, let's rebuild the leg rig, and here we go. We want to display the joints again, and this is what I was pointing to. This is the parent control, right? So very similar to this one. This is also called, it's actually called shoulder control here. By the way, we can define all the namings here if we want to make changes. So for the arm guide component settings, we can define all the section names here. Shoulder, so this is the naming for that parent node here. Upper, elbow, lower, wrist. And for the leg, we can see the top name is parent, upper knee, lower ankle, and toes, and so on. For the leg, there's also a quadruped option, so this is interesting, obviously for quadrupeds, where also the ankle twist count will have an effect, and additional functionality for swapping between regular and quadruped leg instantly on animation and stuff like that. But this is only about the biped, so I'm not going to take this further. So let's mirror the guide. Guide, right, selected component, build. Here we go. Let's unhide all the rest of the guides. And we're pretty much done with the guiding. Only thing left is the display switch, though that comes by default. With the biped collection, the display switch we can also find here in various. It's called it's in basic display switch. It's that component here. Again, we can look up the component type here in settings, component type display switch, and this is how we're going to find it here under components. So obviously we can assemble all the biped manually, right? So this is just a collection that we created initially, the biped, which is actually an assembly of different body components. All right, so again, we want to find a good location for this display switch. So we actually want to rotate this up, make it a little bit larger, and build this rig. So for the display switch, it's important to note that if we go to settings, or actually we don't really need to go to settings, this is just, we can just see the parenting, but the name is body display switch. So this display switch will collect all the display settings from all the previously built components, which have the, if we select all of them and go to settings, which have the display switch attributes set to the same name as the display switch component. So in this case, body display switch. Right? So all of these components have this display switch attribute, right? And we can modify it by selecting all of them at once. Right. So by default, on the biped collection, it's the correct attribute here. It's the correct string value. So we can simply build this display switch, and the control will then collect all the display switches of all the components with that body display switch value. So here we can instantly show all the joints, and it seems like I didn't build the right side yet. Yeah, obviously not. I didn't build the right side. Rigs for arm and leg. I will just do that right now. Here we go. And this also needs to be updated. This was before the guide placement. I'll just rebuild this one as well. Here we go. So this should be fine. Now let's build the display switch again. And yeah, now we got it. So You can see all the joints here. We can toggle all the control display and various sections of the rig. So we can here define the default display, for instance. So maybe we don't want to display the viewer's FK. So I'm going to toggle this off here. Upper and lower, we might or might not want to have it displayed. Sorry about my mouse. It's zooming in accidentally. So let's keep it a little bit simple and hide the FK as well. And we might also just hide all of the arm and leg curve controls or twist controls or bendy controls, whatever you want to call it, which are these ones. So just to demonstrate this very quickly, I'm showing, I will show all the joints, and yeah, these are basically the bendy controls. So I also want to unhide the bendy control display. So this is for arm and leg. Here we go. So this is a much cleaner view of the rig. All right, so we're gonna save setup, and let's say we're gonna just save a new version. So Bear will ask us to overwrite or save a new version. So here we go. And we can actually also just save all. So save all will go through all the steps and say setup, guide, rig settings, deform, or blend shapes if they exist. So it would also save a guide. We can, in this case, just save guide separately and also save rig settings. So rig settings are all the attribute values of all the control nodes. For example, in which FK, whether we are an IK or FK by default, and all sorts of custom attributes that the user might have set here on the controls. So these are being saved on the rig settings build step or save option. So rig settings is actually a build step, right? So we just saved it. So if we modify those settings here, and also this includes the display switch settings. So if we, let's say, turn this all back to on, and we build the rig settings, so this will just recover the original state, right, that we saved. All right, so this is all good. And from here, let's give this guy back his clothes. The guiding is completed, the rig has been built, and from here, yeah, we can go ahead with the skinning.